All right, I want to talk about this off my mind. It's October 5th, 2025. Name of this video is sometimes it's modern society has many benefits. And this kind of gets into an ego issue, but like if you have a falling out with somebody, even if it's a next door neighbor or a person that you've talked to for years on end, we're not like living in a farm community where we have to just like get along. Because like if you lived in a, just think about this, if you lived in a community like the Amish, for example, and Americans used to live like this too, at least farmers did, and you have a discrepancy with some thing that's driving your ego crazy, or maybe you got somebody who's got a big mouth or runs, has got a bad personality, or maybe there's something about them that makes you physically or mentally or physically afraid of them. It's kind of good that modern society gives us the luxury to not have to deal with those people. We can turn them off like a light switch. If, for example, I don't want to deal with somebody, as long as you got some money you're not depending on this particular person for employment, or the person you're working for strictly for employment, you pretty much can just quit your job or go somewhere else and work for somebody and never deal with these people again. And I see this all the time, and it kind of bothers me. I hate to talk like this, but there's a few people, and I've had people turn me off like a light switch too, so what goes around comes around. But sometimes you have to turn people off like a light switch. If something happens that's very uncomfortable, and it's something that's not going to get any better, like for example, a woman nowadays, years ago women used to take a lot of abuse from asshole men, and I know these men exist out there because I had a few related to me, and they're physically, mentally abusive. And when you run, a woman can now turn a guy off like that. She doesn't need to depend on him anymore, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. You know, guys will complain and they'll say, well, these women don't need men anymore. And I'm just using women as an example because maybe the guy that she was with was abusive. And so the same thing with men. You know, men don't have to take abuse from women either. And my point is that if we lived in a primitive tribal society, we would almost be forced to we'd be forced to get along. And that might be a good thing for you, because maybe the people that seem like they've got an issue would be called out for their bullshit. So let's say somebody that's a physical bully was in the group, and it was a society where people had to learn to get along. That physical bully might be put in his place or her place real quick. So it may be a good thing to be in a cloistered, closed community, like these people that talk about, oh, the apocalypse is going to happen, like that show, what's that, The Walking Dead, The Living Dead, The Walking Dead. You know, The Walking Dead show, you know, everybody in that group has to get along, and not everybody's got a savory personality. But we are not forced to live in a community like The Walking Dead where we have to get along with people like this. So in my opinion, and this is just me saying this, I like living in modern times where you don't have to deal with nasty women, or women have to deal with nasty men, or some guy's got some weird idiosyncratic personality trait that's antisocial, bordering physical threatening. And this has happened to me. A person that potentially could hurt you mentally, physically. You can turn these people off today. You can just say, okay, well, you don't even have to tell them you're not going to hang around. You just stop. They say, hey, I need your help with something. I need you to help me move this thing. I don't have time. And you just ignore them. You don't even have to tell them why. In fact, that's probably adding fuel to the fire. Somebody says, hey, want to help me fix this air conditioner, or want to help me move this dresser? And this is a person that always loses their cool with you, and you guys don't have good chemistry. Maybe it's good that you don't hang around each other. And you can do this in modern society, whereas years ago you couldn't do that. You had to learn to get along. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword. The guy in the group might be a bully, and he might have a group of other bullies. And I've had this happen to me on more than one occasion. And I'm usually the one to give into it. I'm going to put it this way. I'm usually the one to give into people's abusive behavior. But now I realize that you got to sometimes put the brakes down and say, look, enough is enough. And sometimes it doesn't even help to confront the person on it. I had a guy tell me one time, of all people, he's a hypocrite, but he said, I'm a firm believer, Steve, that if you have a falling out with somebody, you've got to confront them on this and tell them. And I thought to myself, yeah, well, you know, it was interesting because the guy that made that comment to me, we were having a falling out ourselves. And yet here he is giving me advice on this shit. But he told me that, and it made sense. You know, if you're having a falling out with somebody, maybe you do got to confront them about it. Maybe you got to confront them and tell them, look, enough is enough. But then again, what would that do if that person might physically or mentally or verbally go off and start screaming in your face? And I am not getting into a confrontation with somebody physically. You know, I always believe that if you could avoid a confrontation, verbal, physical, get away from it. My sister used to always say, Stevie, just walk away. That was my favorite sister, my wonderful late sister. We had our falling out at times, but her famous line was, Stevie, when all else fails, just walk away. And the person that remains the calmest is the one in control. There's a guy that's on the internet, and I knew this for years, but he was saying that if you're dealing with a sociopath or dealing with a bully, the person that maintains their composure and says as little as they have to say is the one in control. And that's how it is. Yes, for a lot of guys, living in a society where people had to be called out for their BS, they probably would find a wife or girlfriend, get laid, whatever. But the headaches would suck too, because you'd be dealing with all kinds of antisocial bullies. And everybody watching this video at some point has run into a bully or an unsavory character that can never admit when they're wrong. And all I say to them is just stay calm. You don't need to get violent. You don't need to threaten with violence. You just need to walk away. Like my sister used to say, Stevie, just walk away. And I liked it. It was, you know, she told me about an incident I had one time where this guy, I was in my 30s when this happened, early 30s, and some guy who had some unfortunate news in his life was taken out in his personal shit on me one time. And he almost semi-kidnapped me. It was really weird. I don't want to get into the details of this guy, but I told my sister about it. I was a little shook up about it. So this guy was like foaming at the mouth like he had rabies. And then she said, Stevie, she said, you just got to stay calm when you're in a situation like that, and just let him have his way as long as you got enough room to run, which I did. You don't get belligerent. You don't talk back. You'll never see the guy again. The guy never apologized to me, by the way. Long story. I may do a video on this guy one time. It's a scary situation. But I'm in a situation like that now with a couple people in my life that there's a lot of like kind of bad feelings, and I don't like it, but I respect it and I understand it. It happens. So my advice to anybody is, if you're confronting a person that, well, number one, walk away, but be grateful that you don't have to live in an Amish community or a Hasidic Jewish community. God, I couldn't have the chief rabbi in the community or the chief minister in the Amish community just bullying you around and pushing you around and telling you what you can and can't do. Those people have it really bad because they're stuck in those communities. Same thing with if you join a certain sect of Christianity, like if you're Seventh-day Adventist or something, you might be stuck dealing with some guy or a woman that could be making your life really miserable. Now, people leave the church all the time. They leave their synagogues all the time, but it doesn't mean anything. Just stay away from trouble. And like my sister said, just walk away if you have to. Maintain your composure. Be calm. I had to get this off my mind because there's a couple people that have caused me grief, and I've put up with it, and I'm a nice guy, and I don't like to use foul language when I'm on here. And that's it. October 5th, 2025. You guys all have a great day.